everybody. With me today, of course, is co-founder of the Gaggle, Peter Lavelle. And you know what this is? This is 10 o'clock in the morning, East Coast time. This is the way you start the week. This is, nothing else. All this talk Ukraine. This is how you start the week with the Gaggle live stream, a weekly live stream. So everybody, put that coffee pot down, put that book down, put the newspaper down. Focus, please. So, how are you, Peter?
Was desperately worried about what we're going to talk about today because after I guess what now 2 weeks of just a whirlwind of trying to read the tea leaves, and I don't think anyone has done a particularly good job, and I'm not going to toot our horn either here. But we're going to talk a little bit about what happened over the week, and I have a couple of observations.
Mm-hmm.
But this is a lot of moving pieces, and it's ongoing. And I suppose what we're going to need, one benchmark we're going to need is some kind of intervention by Trump or statement or something to kind of give us as a bellwether of what's going on here. Because you can make a lot of arguments, and I won't be able to say, well, no lies detected. I mean,
Right. But I think it's true. So anyway, so Sunday we had the meeting between Rubio, Witkoff, Kushner on one side, and then you had the Ukrainian delegation led by Umerov on the other side. It was supposed to be Andrei Yermak, but Yermak's no longer on the scene. And strangely enough, there was this very, very cursory news conference delivered by Rubio, and let's just watch what happened when Rubio and Umerov finally came out to meet the press.
All right, and I apologize because I'm pressed for time. I think we both are, but
I mean, even that is strange. I'm pressed for time. Well, yeah. What else have we got on the program?
I don't want to be here. There's nothing I really want to say because I don't want it to stick to me. Okay. And then he's got this slouch next to him. Okay.
Yes, that's right.
We had another very productive session building off Geneva, building off the events of this week. As I told you earlier this morning, our goal here is to end the war. But it's more than just to end the war. We don't just want to end the war. We also want to help Ukraine be safe forever. So never again will they face another invasion. And equally importantly, we want them to enter an age of true prosperity. We want the Ukrainian people to emerge from this war, not just to rebuild their country, but to build it back in a way that will be stronger and more prosperous than it's ever been. And so this is comprehensive, what we're working on here today. It's not just about the terms that ends fighting. It's about also the terms that set up Ukraine for long-term prosperity. I thought we started laying the groundwork for that, most certainly in Geneva. I think we continued that work in our communications throughout the week. I think we built on that again today, but there's more work to be done. This is delicate, it's complicated. There are a lot of moving parts, and obviously there's another party involved here that'll have to be a part of the equation, and that'll continue later this week when Mr. Witkoff travels to Moscow, although we've also been in touch in varying degrees with the Russian side, but we have a pretty good understanding of their views as well. So much work remains, but today was, again, a very productive and useful...
Yes, the audience was definitely the Russians.
Right, that's right. Now,
I say that because the Russians wouldn't disagree with that. Does Russia want to have a prosperous Ukraine as a neighbor? Of course,
that's exactly right. But no, he's basically saying here just generalities, really, nothing of any real substance. Anyway, he then goes on. Well, not for much longer.
We continue to be realistic about how difficult this is, but optimistic, particularly given the fact that as we've made progress, I think there is a shared vision here that this is not just about ending the war, which is very important. It is about securing Ukraine's future, a future that we hope will be more prosperous than it's ever been.
Yeah. Once again, we are grateful to American people,
he learned from Zelensky.
Yes.
Secretary,
they all wear this strange uniform.
Work with us. Our objective is a prosperous, strong Ukraine.
Well, you don't have to worry about dry cleaning. That's for sure.
Ukraine. We discussed all the important matters that are important for Ukraine, for Ukrainian people, and U.S. was super supportive. We
Looks like
worked
a bouncer to
at a
me.
circle meeting in Geneva.
A what?
And today we
A
had
bouncer, a
meetings.
bar bouncer.
Yeah, that's a little bit, yes.
This meeting was productive and successful. On the later stages, hopefully, we will keep you updated. Thank you.
Thank you very much, guys. And I
That's it. And that
That's-
was that. After all the waiting, that lasted 2.5 minutes.
Well, what was interesting to me is like some of the press reports is that they talked about elections, which is kind of interesting. Now that Yermak is out of the picture, which may mean, I'm parsing my words here, may mean Zelensky as well. They're talking about a new leadership. This is, of course, something that the Russians have been saying, that they get a legal ending or legal understanding of whatever is going to unfold. They need a partner, a legal partner in Ukraine, and it looks like the Americans have taken that on board.
Right, but before they get a legal partner, they would have to hold elections. I mean, you'd have to
Well,
hold
that's what you
elections
said.
now.
In press reports said that they talked about elections, which is interesting.
Right, right. Well, I mean, there were elections within the 28-point plan. I mean, that was one of the 28-point plan. There'd be elections held within 100 days. So, but essentially, there's almost nothing here. The key is, obviously, Witkoff is heading for Moscow sometime this week. Maybe Kushner will be there. And if you look at the Axios report, I always look at Axios because they usually the best informed. Really, but they say if you look at this here, it says U.S. and Ukraine made no additional progress on Trump's peace plan. Rubio says he didn't really say that, but that's the Axios
Well,
spin,
you said made no.
right?
Okay.
After 5 hours of talks, Rubio and Umerov gave a short statement to the press without taking questions. Productive session. More work to be done, says Rubio, and stressed the U.S. will have to hold discussions with the Russian side. That will continue later this week when Mr. Witkoff will travel to Moscow, but we have also been in touch with them. Umerov said the negotiations were productive and successful. The U.S. side hopes that bringing a set of U.S.-Ukraine understandings to the table will help them make progress with Putin. But as the Ukrainians have managed to secure edits to the original plan, to the 28-point plan, but we haven't seen what the edits are, the Kremlin has cast doubt on its willingness to accept the terms. Putin also doubled down on his territorial demands and so on. But obviously, you look at that, almost nothing in that report. There was a kind of an interesting article which caused a lot of hysteria during the past few days. A very long, excruciatingly tedious article. I mean, tedious just in terms of its length, about in the Wall Street Journal, in these kind of discussions that have been taking place between Witkoff and Dmitriev. And they're really getting down into this business deals. I mean, this is the language that that obviously Witkoff understands. It's also the language that Trump understands. Now, the hysteria that this has generated, oh my God, Ukraine is being sold down the river, being sold down the river. And but basically, what they're doing here is, I think, what we have said before, namely that this is what Trump is interested in. You see, Trump is not interested in this war. He's never seen any point to this war. He's never seen, he's never seen any point what America gets out of Ukraine, and and it really just annoys him that Zelensky comes regularly to Washington asking for more money. And so this article was was really, as I say, all the Michael McFalls and everyone else got really hysterical, but it is revealing as to the thinking of the people around Trump. So here's the Wall Street Journal article: "Make money, not war. Trump's real plan for peace in Ukraine." And then the Kremlin pitched the White House on peace through business. To Europe's dismay, the president and his envoy are on board. And as we read this article, we find out who isn't on board: the Europeans. They're being cut out from any possible business deal. No money for you. And so here, they talk about this meeting that took place between Witkoff and Dmitriev. For the Kremlin, the Miami talks were the culmination of a strategy hatched before Trump's inauguration to bypass traditional U.S. national security apparatus and convince the administration to view Russia not as a military threat, but as a land of bountiful opportunity. By dangling multi-billion dollar rare earth and energy deals, Moscow could reshape the economic map of Europe while driving a wedge between America and its traditional allies. And then Witkoff is quoted by the journal: Russia has so many vast resources, vast expanses of land. If we do all that and everybody's prospering and they're all part of it, and there's an upside for everybody, that's going to naturally be a bulwark against future conflicts there because everybody is thriving. Now, why I think it's very interesting is that this is definitely a way of thinking. You could say, "Oh, this is very naive," but nonetheless, this is the way Trump has always been thinking. Trump wanted to get in to the Soviet Union. He wanted to make money in the Soviet Union. He never actually did so. Oddly enough, he's really, in terms of as American businessmen who actually did make some money in the Soviet Union. Trump was never really one of them, but he has always coveted the idea that there's some money to be had in the Soviet Union.
He did the beauty contests.
That's so, but that was already in Russia, So,
Yeah,
but
that was already.
yeah, but he tried with Gorbachev. He tried to win some favors from Gorbachev.
Well, I mean, isn't it interesting, George? I mean, the way the Wall Street Journal is portraying it is that, there are vast resources in Russia. Who knew? No, they've been coveting Russia's resources since the first second after the end of the Cold War. Okay.
Right.
And to break up Russia and to exploit it. Now, maybe this is a different track. Look, if we can't beat them, why don't we join them? Okay. Right. That might be the approach. And I think that's something that Trump would intuitively understand. Okay.
Right.
I mean, Marco Rubio wants to destroy the state of Venezuela to take over its resources. If you pitch Trump in a different way and say, well, Maduro wants to be partners with you. Well, let's talk about that.
Right,
okay.
Right,
this is a different track. And I agree, this may be unique to Trump.
That's it. That's right. But I'm assuming that, if this materializes, because this is all still a lot of talk, if this materializes, it's not going to be done in the style of the 90s when the capitalists came in and bought everything out in Russia. So it would have to be partnerships. And I guess, the Chinese have shown how it can be done. Basically, China is just a giant workshop. Western companies go in there and basically set up huge plants in China. China gets very rich as a result. And China, those deals that China signs, they are very advantageous to China because they get intellectual property sharing, which is very useful in the future, and they get part ownership of these companies. So you would think that Russia would be able to get deals along those lines, and not just allow these looters to come in and snap up resources and then and then sell them to others. So here, there's a couple of things that were quite interesting further on in this article. It says, as Western leaders convene this week to digest the plan, this is the 28-point plan, Poland's Prime Minister Tusk offered a pithy summary. We know this is not about peace, it's about business.
Well, as he said, grumbling, well, if business is the way to peace, sign me up. He makes it sound like it's grubby or something.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. So Trump has told Witkoff he wanted the war to end and the administration was willing to take the risk of welcoming Putin's emissary to Washington, which is, of course, Dmitriev, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent had questions about the unique request, but ultimately signed off. Well, he would have to sign off because Trump is his boss.
Or sign out.
Yes. And then Dmitriev arrived at the White House on April 2nd and presented a list of multi-billion-dollar business projects where the two governments could pursue together. At one point, Secretary of State Marco Rubio told Dmitriev that Putin needed to demonstrate he was serious about peace. But Dmitriev felt his business-like rapport was breaking through. We can transition investment trust into a political role, he said in an unpublished interview that month. And then we have the Dmitriev and Witkoff in St. Petersburg, and then further, Dmitriev and Witkoff, meanwhile, were chatting regularly by phone about increasingly ambitious proposals. The U.S. and Russia were discussing major agreements on oil and gas exploration and Arctic transportation. Dmitriev told the Journal, "We believe that the U.S. and Russia can cooperate basically on everything in the Arctic. If a solution is found in Ukraine, U.S. economic cooperation can be a foundation for our relationship going forward."
Yeah, but this Arctic cooperation it originated on the Russian side. This is not a new idea,
No,
everyone.
no, absolutely not.
Not a new idea.
No, absolutely not. And then it was Dmitriev was pushing a plan for U.S. companies to tap the roughly $300 billion in Russian central bank assets frozen in Europe for U.S.-Russian investment projects and U.S.-led reconstruction of Ukraine. So remember, that was also part of the 28-point plan. Again, they would cut the Europeans out, so they wouldn't get any of this $300 billion as formulated in that in the Trump plan. U.S. and Russian companies could join to exploit the vast mineral wealth of the Arctic, no limits, and then. But this is quite interesting. Again, is how the government the government was cut out from these negotiations. In the lead up to an August summit in Alaska between Trump and Putin, Witkoff and Dmitriev discussed a prisoner exchange that would have been the largest bilateral swap in their country's history. The CIA, which traditionally manages prisoner trades with Russia, wasn't fully briefed on that proposed exchange, nor was the State Department's Office for Unjustly Imprisoned Americans. And then career officials in the office overseeing sanctions of the Treasury Department have at times learned details of Witkoff's meetings with Moscow from their British counterparts.
Everybody's on the same page, everyone.
This is very funny. In the days after Alaska, a European intelligence agency distributed a hard copy report in a manila envelope to some of the continent's most senior national security officials. So, a European intelligence agency, who were shocked by the contents. Inside were details of the commercial and economic plans the Trump administration had been pursuing with Russia, including jointly mining rare earths in the Arctic. So Witkoff had worked closely with Vance and Marco Rubio, but Trump's envoy to Ukraine, former Lieutenant General Keith Kellogg, has been all but frozen out of serious talks, and last week he said he's leaving the government. But I just the story about
Can you imagine these European intelligence officials? Doesn't Trump know we're going to war with Russia in a few years?
Exactly.
We're getting ready for war.
That's right. But I love this. A hard copy report in the Manila envelope to the continent's most senior national security officials, after the most senior, who were shocked. They were shocked by the contents, details of a commercial and economic plans the Trump administration had been pursuing with Russia, including joint one. Now, but I like the way they were shocked, because you think, well, what's there to be shocked about? You kind of know this is what Trump was thinking. I mean, Trump's been talking about this for a long time. I mean, this is the way he thinks, because he's said many times before that he doesn't see any real reason for a war with Russia. He wants to get Russia on board for the coming confrontation with China, And so, yeah, that's exactly what he's thinking. But the point is, they're all shocked. But if you're the United States, then if let's say you're Trump, and you're thinking, well, whose side should I be on Ukraine's side or should I be on Russia's side? So, what's the argument that I have to support Ukraine? I don't get the argument. How does that benefit the United States to be on
Because
Ukraine's side?
they don't generate any
Income,
physical or political capital for Trump.
right?
They're on the negative side of the ledger all the time.
It's on the negative side of the ledger, and so therefore, well, that's a net outflow.
Yeah.
So well, here there's a net, here they're talking about there's all these deals on the horizon. Well, that's money coming in, where this is money going out. So it doesn't really make a great deal of sense. Particularly, I mean, it doesn't make sense even if you're not a businessman. But for somebody who is a businessman, then this really makes very little sense. And but this caused this absolute meltdown on Twitter over the weekend. Everyone was just, my God, Ukraine is being stabbed in the back. A betrayal. This is betrayal.
No, it's the Europeans that are stabbing them in the back. Okay, that's where the problem is.
Right. Well, that's right. I mean, but
what with Europeans? They don't want to do business with Russia. Fine, the Russians accept it. The Americans want to. Okay, all right. I mean, this is a craven choice on the part of the Europeans. Okay,
right.
It's your problem.
Right. That's right. That exactly. So today, speaking of the Europeans and NATO, we had one of these NATO big shots. When the head of the NATO political committee saying we are ready to take preemptive actions against Russia.
And I'm sorry to interrupt you, George, but we did a podcast on this, a month ago?
Exactly.
A month ago. We broached this. And I warned everyone that we were the only ones talking about it then. Okay, now people are talking about it now.
That's right.
This is in lieu of the tip jar conversation later.
The dogs already. Yeah. This is
yeah. I heard them say it.
That's right. This is the conversation we need to be having. So this was here's the story in the Telegraph, because this guy, I think Dragone, is an admiral, is an Italian admiral. He has this. Here's the Telegraph. It says, NATO preemptive strikes on Russia could be considered defensive action. This is right. It's almost. It's almost comical.
I said, I'm going to set your apartment on fire because I'm preempting you setting my apartment on fire.
Yes, that's exactly right. But you see, NATO speak, this language that NATO has invented for itself. We're a defensive alliance. We're expanding all the time. We conduct military exercises thousands of miles away from our zone of activity. We are pouring in weapons into Ukraine, which is not a member of NATO, not a member of the EU, but somehow we're defensive. In their universe, they're being defensive. So it's perfectly reasonable. Yeah, it's a preemptive, but it's defensive. And the media just they write it all down. Oh yeah, it's defensive.
Yeah, I mean the interesting thing is because this is NATO speak within the NATO bubble, the NATO eco sphere and eco chamber. And do you think the Russians are going to say, "Oh, but they're just being defensive"? I mean,
but that's
don't worry, Mr. President. This is all defensive on their part, okay?
But that's what it's so ridiculous, and that's what makes NATO such a stupid, ridiculous organization that they say these things, and it doesn't even occur to them. They're so lacking any self-awareness. It doesn't occur to them that you can say to your blue in the face that you're defensive, But it's a matter of how your adversaries see you. They don't see you as defensive, and just the more you repeat that you're defensive, the more suspicious they get about as to what you're really up to.
Exactly. From 2014 to 2022, at the start of the special military operation, just go to the broadsheets. Go to New York Times, Wall Street Journal, Washington Post. They tell you in numbers and people the NATOization of Ukraine, and they're proud of it.
That's right. That's right.
Okay,
That's
and
right.
so the Russians are saying, "Is this what this defensive?
That's right. And,
How can this be defensive?"
we've said this many times before, that the man who did the most to reveal this is, of course, Stoltenberg. But Stoltenberg said, "Well, we've been in Ukraine since 2014. We've been building up Ukraine's military since 2014. Mr. Putin wanted less NATO. Now he's got more NATO."
Yeah, real knee slapper, real knee slapper. I had on my program before the start of the special military operation a very prominent British journalist, and she told me, she said, it's remarkable how open they are about it. You have Ukrainian NATO flags on government buildings all through the country, all through the country.
That's right.
Okay,
That's right.
and so Russians can see that. They can say, "Whoa, look at this NATO flag here. It looks like they're staking their flag in the ground." Okay, they didn't see that as defensive at all.
No,
and that's
no.
that's why we had in December 15th, 2021, the Russians said, "Look, we're throwing down the gauntlet." I mean, this is not defensive. I mean, this is obviously directed against Russia. It's not directed against Turkey and not against Iceland. It's not against Thailand. It's against Russia.
Exactly. Absolutely. And which is why what they're basically doing is building up
rolling it out.
Satellite states on Russia's border. There are already 6 NATO states that border Russia. And NATO wants to make a lot more of that. 6 states. And the whole idea, what's Russia going on about? 6 NATO states, and given the hostility of this alliance, that's a serious issue. And that's when you can when you say 6 states, then you can see why the Russians were not going to accept Ukraine as number 7, which was the plan here. But anyway, so
in which the West has invaded Russia through Ukraine repeatedly.
Right, exactly. And so this is the Telegraph, and then this is he told the Financial Times that a quote preemptive strike could be considered a defensive action, but added it is further away from our normal way of thinking and behavior. I don't know what that means.
Can you come on, George? I don't. One of us should know what that means. I don't know what it means, so it's incumbent upon you to tell us what that means.
Yeah, I can't. I mean, again, NATO speak it's a language peculiar to NATO. You have to be fluent at this to understand the nuances. So I can't say I understand it fully. But this is this is TV Poland. This gives a little bit more of a for account of what he's just said. And he says NATO weighs more aggressive posture as Russian hybrid attacks intensify. So naturally that's the spin, the Russian hybrid attacks. So they have to be more aggressive. And and then it says, since launching its full-scale invasion of Ukraine in February 2022, Moscow has been accused of orchestrating hybrid operations across Europe in what Western officials describe as an effort to intimidate Ukraine's allies and weaken support for Kiev.
Well, you have to at least give it to TV Polska that they said alleged, at least.
That's right. And then we have the familiar litany. It says incidents in recent months have ranged from drone and fighter aircraft incursion, GPS jamming, suspected sabotage. This is suspected sabotage is when faulty electrical wiring and there's a fire in a deserted shopping mall in the middle of the night.
The GPS jamming was I think it was in Romania.
Right, and I've got that. I have here the exactly. This is the story. Remember,
flat out lie. Flat out lie.
And this is Politico ran this. So it says Bulgaria flip-flops on von der Leyen's plane's GPS glitch. And then it says confusion reigns over whether Moscow was behind the incident. And so here it says the Bulgarian government on Thursday flip-flopped on allegations that Russia jammed GPS signals to European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen's plane, and then flip-flopped again. Now, the accusation was a very serious one. I mean, they were suggesting Russia tried to kill von der Leyen. I mean, that was when the media ran with that story. Oh, the Russians just trying to assassinate Ursula von der Leyen. It is leaving officials in a bind as to what really happened. And then Bulgarian Prime Minister Rosen Zhelyakov told Parliament that the Commission's president's plane had not been disrupted, but had only experienced a partial signal interruption, the kind typically seen in densely populated areas. The Deputy Prime Minister and Transport Minister Grozdan Karadjov also denied there was evidence of disruption to the GPS signal of the Commissioner's President's flight. According to empirical data, according to the radio detection, the records of our agency, civilian and military, there is not a single fact supporting the claim to silence the GPS signal that affected the plane. That's pretty categorical from the Transport Minister.
Yeah, and it's pretty understandable to lay people like ourselves.
Exactly. And then clearly there was a problem here. We got Houston. We have a problem here. Brussels obviously got on very quickly to Sofia. Hey, remember, who pays your wages. Yeah. Remember which side your bread is buttered. Yeah. But just hours later, the government again changed its position, with Zhelyakov holding an impromptu news conference. He rushed out after getting his marching orders.
Was the guy standing behind him have a gun to his back?
Yeah, that's what it sounds like. Holding an impromptu news conference early afternoon to revert the official line to the electronic warfare happening in Ukraine once again. There was a mess of information with questions, facts, and circumstances interpreted in a way that was intended to hurt the Bulgarian institutions, said the Prime Minister at the impromptu press conference. He added that just because the ground instruments had not detected any jamming, that didn't mean that the onboard devices of the aircraft had not detected jamming.
Okay, well, the first explanation I understood. This one,
I don't understand. So it's like well, just because there's no evidence of jamming, that doesn't mean that there wasn't jamming. This is the classic kind of NATO speak. Well, just because we don't have any evidence that there was jamming doesn't mean that there wasn't any jamming.
And you're Prime Minister of Bulgaria today. Might not be tomorrow.
He might not be tomorrow. But remember, this is the stunt that they did in Romania after they canceled that election, and then they were obviously having difficulties coming up with any evidence of Russian interference. And then they finally came to the conclusion, well, just because we don't have any evidence of Russian interference, that doesn't mean that there wasn't Russian interference. Of course, that's when you do that. Then you've got the perfect get out clause, which says, hey, well, how do you prove a negative? Well, you can't prove a negative. How can you prove that there wasn't? I mean, I can't prove that there wasn't any jamming.
No, they're just saying that's their default position. Okay,
right.
That's the truth. Yeah, I've noticed in the chat here these attacks on tankers, and it says, I haven't heard this one off the coast of Africa, but in the Black Sea. This is the kind of escalation that George and I were talking about. We've done numerous podcasts on the so-called shadow fleet, which is not shadow at all. But I keep asking people, sometimes I get a blank stare in return. What about escalation? Because I keep seeing it.
Right, I keep seeing it too. And we're getting ever more escalation. I mean, first of all, we can see here we're getting escalation of rhetoric from NATO, and then we've got this attack on these tankers in the Black Sea. We can now expect that they're gonna try and board one of these the shadow fleet tankers again, just to provoke some kind of a confrontation. The whole point. Yeah, go on.
Now it'll be they'll claim that it's defensive.
Of course it is. Absolutely. Of course it's defensive.
It was a
Um,
defensive attack. They'll
right.
say something like that. They will.
Yes, exactly. It was defensive. It was the way they formulate these things. It's always very interesting because and this comes up, I think, in this interview that we're too good for this world. We West. We're just too good. Because we just the reason why we have to do this preemptive thing is because we're democracies, we're free societies. We're not like the Russians. The Russians can do all the horrible, terrible things. We have to obey norms. Now, never once have you obeyed any norms whatsoever. but it's a lovely. It's the kind of the self image of ourselves. It's a little like, I mean, we talked about like Golda Meir, who said, "We will never forgive the Palestinians from forcing us to kill their children."
Well, it's
you know,
like Michael McFaul. He was in a debate, and I think it was with Mearsheimer and Waltz. I think, yeah, that was that debate. It was an awful debate.
yeah,
But he said that American diplomats lie all the time. Of course, we lie all the
right,
time.
right.
Okay.
That's right. Well, that was very funny because when he said that, of course, yeah, we lie all the time. To which then they say, okay, so why would Russia believe anything that you say? Because they were also trying to argue, well, NATO has given all these assurances that it's a
All
defensive.
right. Yeah.
Never dream of waging aggressive war against Russia.
Okay.
They've given you all these assurances.
Is it trusting an arsonist not to attack your house?
Yeah,
I'll attack your house, but I won't attack your house. Okay, I won't burn your house. I'm going to burn the neighborhood down, but I'll save you. That's and NATO is an arsonist organization.
That's right. That, as you said, that was such a terrible debate. That this obvious contradiction in what McFaul and Sikorsky was saying, that Mearsheimer and Waltz weren't able to pick up on.
Well, do you remember how it was Mearsheimer and Waltz had the first swing? You remember what they started out with?
Yeah, yeah.
Sometimes great powers make mistakes. I'm paraphrasing. I don't remember.
That's right. Exactly. Well, I think they went. It was even worse than that. Sometimes great powers do stupid things.
Do stupid things.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's it. You've lost the debate. That's it. Yeah.
As far as we're concerned, the debate was over.
It's over. Of course, it's over. I mean,
the first 30 seconds.
That's it. You're done. I mean, once you've admitted that you've done something, that this is something stupid, well, that's it. There's nothing to argue about. You basically admitted your opponent's arguments. Well, once you've done that, that's it. It's over. And it was a disgusting thing because the vote was overwhelming against.
That's in Canada. That was in Canada. Okay, it's MOOC, the MOOC debate. I think it's
MOOC.
I'm not sure. I mean, the Ukrainian diaspora is quite significant in Canada. That's not a venue. Okay, it should have been like in Panama. Okay.
Right. No, I mean all of that. I don't take that voting seriously. However, I knew even though it was going this anywhere that would be you've lost the debate. The moment you concede something fundamental in your argument, you cannot win the debate.
You conceded.
Yeah, exactly. So here's the this just goes on with this NATO buffoon, and then he goes. He says we are studying everything on cyber. We are kind of reactive. Being more aggressive or being proactive instead of reactive is something that we are thinking about.
Okay, this must be just a bad translation because who talks like that? I mean, is this guy peeing his pants? Is he saying this? I'm sorry, this guy lost kind of control here. Okay.
Well, I take your point about the translations. I mean, he's Italian, so English is not his first language. This is also a Polish publication, so probably English is not their first language. However, I assume they're quoting the Financial Times, so whoever was transcribing the conversation would turn it into English. However, it's also not unlike the kind of gibberish that NATO speaks. I mean, this. There's nothing unusual in everything that I'm reading here. Yeah,
We,
that's more or less the way NATO speaks.
we really, really need a NATO translator app. Okay, because this is not English.
No,
Okay.
no, that's not the NATO speak is not English. That definitely. It's as Dragoni said, the alliance is examining whether elements of hybrid conflict, especially cyber operations, where many NATO members possess offensive capabilities, should be met with a more assertive approach. Dragoni said that a preemptive strike could be considered a defensive action, but added that it is further away from our normal way of thinking and behavior. I mean, the point is that he's essentially just being deliberately evasive. He's sort of suggesting, yeah, we're going to do this but if you can't really admit that you're about to launch a cyber attack because I think a lot
Yeah,
of
well, George, let's be serious here. Let's talk to these people as if we're grown-ups, okay, which we are in comparison. You want to contemplate a major cyber attack on the infrastructure of Russia, give it a try. And then the next day, the lights will be turned off for you.
Right.
Okay? That's why this is not done.
You're absolutely right.
That's why it's not done.
Yeah.
This we in the waning days of the Obama administration. I don't know if it was Obama himself or whoever. Considered what some kind of cyber attack on Russia for election interference. I don't know. It's quickly pointed out. Well, they can return the favor and pretty damn quick. Okay.
Absolutely, you're right. It doesn't because what are you going to do? You're going to hit a hydroelectric dam and then cause massive flooding. You're going to hit a sewage works, and then there's that's the end of any clean drinking water. You can do enormous damage. Just
Easily.
very quickly,
easily and cheaply.
Yes, but so that's why they talk in this in this peculiar way because if people could understand what he's saying, that's exactly the question they would ask. Well, what the hell are you talking about? What are your plans? What are you going to hit? And you'd also say, why are you doing this? I mean, what are you at war with Russia? What's the provocation for this? What's the act? Because there was a fire in some a shopping mall. I mean, what all this talk about this hybrid war, you still haven't presented any evidence of anything that Russia has done. Those explosions in those warehouses, we've talked about a plausible solution. Yeah, you're basically sending weapons and ammunition. They're lying around in warehouses, and they do tend to go off. I mean, if you don't if you don't look after them.
We did a fascinating podcast not long ago about balloons and illicit cigarettes. So
Yes.
you want to go to war over that?
Oh
Is
yeah,
that-
that's right. Yeah.
Remember that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Which
yeah.
we never saw any pictures of, which was really odd.
What was
Really
that?
odd. There were ever any pictures of these things. Okay.
Yeah, well, that was I think Belarus.
That was
Belarus
yeah,
and Lithuania, wasn't it?
and
Lithuania, that's right. And then
the cigarette contraband war.
the contraband bomb, and then Lithuania, in response, closed the border. So there were all these trucks. Basically, they were in Belarus. They couldn't go back and to Lithuania. And I think now the EU, Lithuania has gone to the EU. Hey, can you help us out? We'd like these trucks because they're kind of delivering goods. And so the EU, we'll look into it. Because otherwise they're just lying around in Belarus, parked somewhere. So presumably full of goods. So Lithuania, having done this extraordinary thing of closing the border, and they thought, well, we'd like
Over
these trucks.
balloons with cigarettes. Who's running the store?
Yeah. Well, I think the point is that they want this war. I mean, they do want this war, and so they're doing whatever they can to provoke it. So
Oh, good point in the chat here about reaction. Yeah, the U.S. Air Traffic Control is running on a thread right now. Okay,
yeah,
it would be pretty easy to tip that over.
right,
Okay,
yeah,
be careful what you do.
yeah.
Okay, what is it? FAFO. You know, FAFO.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, yeah, that's right. Um, so, um, so this is um, then he says being more aggressive compared with the aggressivity. So that's a a new
That'll
a
be good.
neologism. They've invented a new word, aggressivity, of our counterpart could be an option.
Yeah.
The
Well,
issue,
that's a nice way of talking about your enemy counterpart.
that's right. The issues are legal framework, jurisdictional framework. Who is going to
Jurisdiction.
do this? Yeah. Dragoni said that NATO has recently found success with its Baltic Sentry mission. This was that was the response to those drones. You remember the drone hysteria of about a month ago? Apparently, the Russians were sending drones into Eastern Europe, and so they created the Baltic Sentry mission to fight off these drones, under which member states deploy patrol ships, surveillance aircraft, and naval drones to deter sabotage in the Baltic Sea, one of Europe's most sensitive maritime regions.
Yeah. Talk about sabotage. How about Nord Stream?
I know, it's a classic. That's what I mean. The lack of self awareness is just staggering. You read this, sabotage. Oh, the Russians are doing all this sabotaging. Um, and then since 2022, the area has seen at least 6 suspected sabotage incidents and 11 undersea cables damaged or disabled, many of which European officials have linked to Russia's so called shadow fleet. And but
Yeah.
presumably among these 6 suspected sabotage incidents, Nord Stream is not one of them.
Yeah. Okay. And here's a test. Okay. Okay. So we have here in this text since 2022. Okay. To the present, presumably. Okay. Can you give us the empirical data on the damage to cables,
Right,
cables damaged and disabled from 10 years before that?
exactly.
Okay. So compare that
Absolutely.
10-year period
Yeah.
to 2022 to I bet you anything, George, maybe going on a limb here, it's more or less the same.
More or less the
Cables
same.
damaged all the
Because
time.
it's a heavily congested
Oh,
sea.
and considering the ordnance that was dropped there during the Second World War and
Right,
immediately after.
exactly. So if you're going to make this case that somehow they're doing deliberately damaging these undersea cables, well, present some evidence. But after all, I mean, we've been reading this now. I don't know how many 2 years have been talking about these undersea cables. No one has presented any evidence of any of that it was some deliberate attempt to damage these undersea cables.
You have ships that are dragging their
Right,
anchors, all kinds of stuff.
right.
All kinds. You know, when they were building the Nord Stream pipelines, I mean, because it was a big story here, the stuff they found on the bottom of the sea. Oh my goodness! It's a literal dump underwater.
Yeah, I'm sure that's right. Exactly. Um, and then, so this goes on, um, and then so and then it says the operation launched in January has helped prevent a repeat of earlier cable cutting incidents. It says from the beginning of Baltic Sentry, nothing has happened, so this means that the deterrence is working. Now, this is a classic case of the flawed logic. In other words, you know, nothing happened because there was nothing to happen. I said, oh, that means the deterrence worked. Well, this is classic NATO speak. Oh well, we put forces on the ground, and this thing that we were expecting to happen didn't happen. Therefore, the forces did their job. Therefore, said no, it didn't happen because there was never any likelihood of it happening. You made the whole thing up out of whole cloth. So, Baltic Sentry has been a huge success.
Yeah, well, somebody puts that on their resume, and they go, "Oh, what? I'm going to promote you, okay? Because nothing happened, because nothing was expected to happen."
That's right. That's right. And of course, that justifies. Oh well, we got to do more of this because it's obviously been so successful. So whatever it is we're doing, we need to do more.
Or maybe just like, hey, there's a lot of stuff going on in the Baltic. Why don't we get the two sides, three, everyone sit down and say, well, what do you know? It might work if you had reasonable people, because these people are looking for a cause for
Right.
conflict. It's
Right.
not the reverse. So they say, "Hey, look, this kind of stuff could create a conflict. We got to talk to these guys."
No,
See,
no, no, no.
everything's the reverse.
That's
Okay,
exactly
the
no, no,
worse
no.
the better. The worse the
That,
better.
that's exactly the way they're thinking. Um, and then it goes on there that um, yet concerns remains after a Finnish court dismissed the case against the crew of the Eagle S, a shadow fleet vessel suspected of cutting underwater electricity and data cables, on the grounds that the actions occurred in international waters. Asked whether the ruling effectively gives Russian vessels free rein, I like the way you formulate the question. Finnish Foreign Minister Elina Valtonen, she's the one who was in Georgia. Remember when she was in Georgia a few weeks ago? Doing this ridiculous podcast. Told the FT, yes, and that's a problem. So your own courts have thrown this nonsense out. And then Valtonen said that a more assertive stance is under consideration, but urged caution. We should also take a step back and really analyze what the aggressor is after. Then probably we shouldn't be hysterical. We have our own playbook and we should trust it because it's quite robust.
Well, this is completely dishonest. I mean, you want to under consideration. Well, how can it be under a serious consideration if you already have an aggressor? I mean,
Right.
this again, the logic is folds in.
Completely logic. There's no logic here. And then Dragoni acknowledged that NATO faces inherent constraints. And he says, we have much more limits than our counterpart because of ethics. That's a good. We have
Those
ethics.
People, yeah,
Ethics. Because of law, because of jurisdiction. God, we're just too good for this world. I don't want to say it's a loser position, but it is a harder position than our counterparts. So you've made everything up. Basically, you haven't gone anywhere. Oh, it's because of ethics. We really we just care. That we just care. What is this law? What law has NATO ever followed? What law has NATO ever followed?
Well, if NATO is so inherently angelic and good, then why didn't NATO invade Gaza and to stop the genocide? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, they're so myopic. They're
Yes.
so myopic.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
They only see evil when they want to see it. Okay,
Yes.
and
That's
what they see may not be evil, but that's the only way they can interpret it. Okay,
That's right.
This is the end of civilization for these folks. I mean, if you can't conduct a coherent discussion and debate. No, we lie all the time. We lie all the time. Yeah, that's right.
Speaking of being too good for this earth, NATO has come up with a new plan to sabotage any peace talks, and that is that we need trials. We need to have war crimes trials. We need to put the Russians on trial. We can't just have an agreement and people walking away. We need to have trials. This is the latest story. This is very very interesting because of course this is what they did particularly in the Balkans. He said, well, we can't really settle this war. We have all these opportunities to settle. We need to have trials. We need to put people on trial. That means you've got another 30 years of bitterness and hatred to contend with, and that's the general idea. So this is the new line coming from the European continent. Why are we being ignored? Why don't we have a seat at the table? This is that we have to have trials. So here is this story in.
We're going to take you to court because we don't have a seat at the table. Okay, right.
Here it is.
I'm still waiting for the trials of 500 years of colonialism in around the world by the European powers. I'm still waiting for those trials.
Well, that isn't going to happen. EU tells Trump, you can't pardon Putin for war crimes in Ukraine. Now, I don't understand how anyone can pardon Putin any more than Putin can pardon Trump, or anyone can pardon anyone else. What kind of power, what kind of jurisdiction do you have to start issuing it with anyone with a pardon? I mean, you can't pardon Putin for war crimes in Ukraine, as if somehow EU has some sort of a right to put anyone on trial. Any move to, quote, wipe the slate clean for Russia in a peace deal would be a historic mistake of huge proportions, says the EU Justice Commissioner.
Is the EU going to have a trials for Gaza?
No.
Sorry.
But you see, it's very interesting because of what the EU is doing, because they know that the ICC option is kind of off the table, and they, particularly what they really want to do is to put Russia on trial for waging an aggressive war. The ICC there was no way that you could ever do that with the ICC, even if Russia were to recognize jurisdiction. So they kind of invented this. Oh, we're going to have a special tribunal. We're going to, we're going to set up a special tribunal, and then they have these meetings, and then they come out of this meeting and they say, we need to congratulate ourselves because we've set up a special tribunal just to try Russia. So here we have the. This is the story. Donald Trump's drive to secure peace in Ukraine must not let Vladimir Putin off the hook for war crimes committed by Russian forces, a top EU official has warned. In an interview with Politico, Michael McGrath, the European Commissioner for Justice and Democracy, said negotiators must ensure the push for a ceasefire does not result in Russia escaping prosecution.
So Ukraine has not committed any war crimes during the conflict?
No.
Oh, sorry.
No.
It shows here what their desired aim here is. They want to focus only on one side of the conflict. Okay?
It is. And of course, it's very interesting because they're not even making a pro forma pretense. Oh, well, we're going to, everyone's going to be on trial. There's going to be this isn't going to be victor's justice. This isn't going to be a one-sided court. No. Everybody's going to be, investigated and prosecuted. I mean, they went through that nonsense with the ICTY. Of course, it was a total lie because basically they always only targeted the Serbs. But at least they felt they had to make a pretense that this was going to be even-handed. There were no preferences. They're not even doing this in this case. His comments reflect concerns widely held in European capitals that the original American blueprint for a deal included the promise of full amnesty for actions committed during the war, alongside plans to reintegrate Russia into the world economy.
Why does anyone assume that that's a Russian demand? That could be a Ukrainian demand.
I would have thought so.
I would have thought.
Yeah, I mean, but I think Ukrainians seem to assume, because they've got the Europeans in their corner, and presumably they hope that one day Trump will be gone, and they'll have some Democrat back in the White House, that any kind of trial would always simply be a trial of Russians. And then here, this is what I always do. And so, back to the this document. And it says, the Trump team's push to rehabilitate the Kremlin chief. The Kremlin chief.
term rehabilitate? Is that the right word?
It's not the right word, but that's that's Politico. Rehabilitate the Kremlin chief comes despite international condemnation of Russia for alleged crimes. Well,
Well,
the
didn't we
international condemnation is very much located in the West. I mean, that's not international. Um, for for alleged including the abduction of 20,000 Ukrainian children.
abduction is not the word. Okay,
No,
if they're making, if this again, there it is not contextualized whatsoever. Are they talking about children that were evacuated from the Donbass from 2014 to 2022? Well, that wasn't
no,
abduction.
no. I mean that
Families sent their children to Russia for protection.
right, right. That's right.
Well, why do you
Um,
want to take? Why would they take 20,000, abduct 20,000 children from the Donbass? That's not the right.
why exactly? It makes absolutely no sense, and of course, it never made any sense, and that's why this is something that just gets repeated again and again, and as we saw yesterday, it's even repeated by a historian, Anthony Beevor, who also kind of you know mindlessly repeats this about the 20,000 Ukrainian children and says, I don't think history will judge kindly any effort to wipe the slate clean for Russian crimes in Ukraine. McGrath said they must be held accountable for those crimes. That will be the approach of the European Union in all of these
I
discussions.
wonder if will there ever be a trial of the snipers on Maidan in February of 2024, which is extremely well documented. It's all public knowledge right now.
Right. No,
Any of those guys going to face trial?
no, of course not. But even, I mean, as you listen to them, I mean, they've already made up their minds. I mean, it's the whole idea that you're going to have some kind of a trial when you already know. Then when you have this guy already saying, well, we know who the guilty is, so we'll give you a fair trial before we pronounce you guilty and send you down for the rest of your life. What we, where were we to do so to allow for impunity for those crimes, we will be sowing the seeds of the next round of aggression, the next invasion. This is the crap they always come up with. This is no peace without justice, and that means basically no peace, which is what it is. No peace without justice. Otherwise, we're fueling the next war. No, you're fueling the next war when you have these kind of nonsensical pseudo legal processes.
Yeah, well, talk about pseudo legal. Okay, well, let's go down another path here. The European Union aided and abetted a conflict that never should have happened in Ukraine. Are they going to be held accountable?
No. And then the Ukrainian authorities have opened investigations into more than 178,000 alleged Russian crimes since the start of the war. Well, what the hell does it matter? It's like the Russians have opened crime investigations into the Ukrainian crimes. I mean, it's like but Politico just reports this, and then clearly, oh well, it's obviously this is some serious investigation that Ukrainians are undertaking. And then so here we go on. The EU and others have worked to set up a new special tribunal for the crime of aggression with the aim of bringing Russian leaders to justice for the full-scale invasion of Ukraine.
How are they going to do that?
Well, that's the interesting thing. How are they going to do that? Well, the way they're going to do it is they're going to set up this tribunal, and they are going to put people on trial, but what they will do is trials in absentia. Now, of course, that's a total violation of every norm of justice. I mean, going all the way back to McCarthy, you can't put someone on trial who's not there to defend himself. But that's what they're going to do, and it's clear. I mean, if one just looks at because the Council of Europe, very helpfully, they came up. If we can just find this, they did a long kind of Q&A to brief us, helpfully on what is involved in the special tribunal, and yeah, and let's see, yeah, this is um, what's it yeah,
So
this
this
yeah.
is they ask themselves questions
He
and they
asked
answer.
himself questions and then answered them.
Yeah,
Yeah. So,
and it's always very helpful, right? Yeah.
very, very helpful. But well, let me just, maybe it's a little earlier. This is where they, how will the tribunal be established? Is this tribunal, I love
It's rhetorical.
Q, is this tribunal fair and impartial? Yes, will we follow internationally and regionally recognized standards of due process and the rule of law? And then it says, what political support? I don't know, maybe it's a little earlier. When I'm trying to find this.
I don't think they weigh discovery very much in
No,
these things.
he says, um, uh, who will be held accountable by this tribunal? Is the Russian Federation not already being held accountable in other ways? The tribunal will focus on senior political and military leaders who are responsible for planning, preparing, and initiating that. The Russian Federation is also being held accountable in other ways. And then, no, that's because. Would it also be possible for the special tribunal to prosecute the leaders of Belarus and maybe even North Korea? Well, this is you can see obviously this is going to be a really up to the highest standards of jurisprudence.
Well, also, George, this is a niche griff. Okay,
very much so.
they're very niche.
Yes.
Someone is going to be doing this for 20 years.
Yeah.
Okay.
No.
I mean, wow. 5-star hotel, wet
Yes.
bar. I mean,
Yes.
being flown home for the weekend.
Yes.
Okay, well, this is going to be a real gig.
A real grift. And there are lawyers salivating. I want to be on this. I want to get in on this tribunal. Yeah. They absolutely. There's going to be a huge amount of money splashing around. Like the same with this, like the Yugoslav tribunal. A lot of money and very little work. This is where just
You get to wear those cool robes, though. Yeah.
yeah, they do like those big robes. Yes, you can see the pomposity and grandiosity of this.
What do they call? Do they call it a bib? I mean, some of them. I don't know. That's what I would call it. But
Yes.
sometimes they're really coolly embroidered and stuff.
Yeah, well, this is it. Will it be possible to carry out trials in absentia? And in which circumstances? Yes, it will be possible to conduct proceedings in absentia, where the interests of justice so require, and where the person concerned waives his or her right to participate in the proceedings. So, what does it mean, waives his or her right? You're not going to show up.
Well, I mean, it's pronounced the same way, but there's a different spelling. Like, wait,
exactly. But trials in absentia will have to be accompanied with procedural safeguards, such as the right of legal representation. If you're not in the trial, if you're not participating in the trial, there is no legal representation. I mean, the whole point of legal representation is not just that you have a lawyer, but that you are actively involved in your own trial. In other words, you're giving instructions to your lawyer. Oh, well, there'll be legal representation. We'll just get some lawyer, and so, you are the lawyer to to defend Putin. Oh, yeah, right. Well, how much do I get paid for this? Oh, you'll be lavishly funded. Okay, fine. I'm going to do it. This is they're just shameless. It's absolutely shameless that this is
yeah, but George,
standards.
Doesn't it tell you it's a Pyrrhic victory because they can't win they can't win through logic, debate. They don't have a good strategy. Their hypocrisy stinks to high heaven. I mean, they don't have a leg to stand on. So we're going to sue them. Okay, that's it. That's the only way they can win.
Yes, that's right. That's right. That's right. But of course, they have a captive media, because whenever the special tribunal will start operating, and it will. I'm quite sure that they will start operating. Money to be had there. Ursula von der Leyen will be more than happy to whip out her checkbook and give them whatever money.
She'll be a witness. She'll be a lead witness.
and, and then they'll start.
Everybody will want to get in on that gig. Okay?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you have these lawyers, among the smarmiest people in the world, and you dangle a lot of money. This is going to be serious money to be had. And they're like, yeah, and for any lawyer, this is wonderful to have on your CV, which is, hey, I worked on this special tribunal.
Maybe Alan Dershowitz will defend Putin.
He would do it. He would absolutely do it. He would do it. He did that with the Yugoslav tribunal. He did defend a Serb there. But when Dershowitz comes, he asks for a lot of money. He doesn't just.
Yeah. Well, no. The reason, also, you get the cameras there.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, you get the eyeballs. Okay. I wonder, they going to get some kind of what's the visual here? Because OJ had the white.
The white was it the white Bronco?
The white Bronco. So they're going to have to work on the optics there. I don't know. It's like when Al Jazeera reports on the conflict in Ukraine. They have this imagery, and it sounds like it's like a fire truck going to a scene. It's just ringing bell. Okay, right. I've never understood that. Okay, what they're or maybe it's their interpretation of some kind of old folklore, Russian music or something. It's incomprehensible. But this tribunal, they'll hire some Hollywood producer, guaranteed.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. But you're absolutely right. What they were going to do is that they'll have this these robes. They love the robes because it gives.
Oh, I like the robes too. It's a real fashion statement. Legal fashion. Yeah, it's it. Hey, you could get that concession, George. That's a how you think like $5,000 a robe? I mean, that's a good business.
That's right. That's right. But of course, like at the ICTY, they had some of these British lawyers, and the British lawyers insisted on wearing wigs because they really like wearing those wigs, even though it's not part of the uniform for the ICTY. But nonetheless, they wanted to wear the wigs.
There's some identity issues there. I don't want to. Cross-dressing in legal affairs, it shouldn't mix these things. Okay. I mean, some of these people think the robes are a dress. Okay, let's leave it there. Okay.
I'm sure that these robes are extremely expensive because there's no.
Well, you got to be fitted for it. George. You got to be fitted for it. Okay.
Right. Anyway, let's look at our locals page and talk to some of our the contributors to the tip jar, the people who make sure that that Buddy and Apple.
Don't claim that we're tip jarists.
Exactly. Anyway, Stone River, always good to see you, Stone River. Thank you for your generosity. Stone River says, sometime back, George cited the April 2025 Drug Enforcement Administration National Drug Threat Assessment. Tren de Aragua drug trafficking activity occurs mainly at the street level and involves the distribution and sale of 2Z in specific regional markets. Will Americans buy Trump bombing Venezuela on the strength of?
Well, I mean, across the board, and this is a polling data that I don't have it in front of me, but I read it this morning. Across the board, Republicans, Democrats, and Independents, they're all against it. All, okay? And among independents, which is very key to elections in the United States because they're the ones that tip it one way or the other. Trump is underwater on this one, big time.
I think so. I think that they haven't.
Well, if you watch what we talked about yesterday, George and I spelled out. What's the win? You bombed Caracas.
It's high. Even if you get everything works out for you. You get minimal amount of force. You don't actually bomb anyone. There's a coup in Caracas. Somebody or other kidnaps Maduro. bung him on a plane. He's flown straight to Miami or New York or wherever. They throw him in prison, and there's going to be a trial. Trump doesn't get anything out of this.
How does that tip an election?
That doesn't tip an election because ultimately his base really, they don't back this. They don't see any reason for this. I mean, they don't like drugs. I mean, at least his base doesn't like drugs. But he hasn't remotely made the case that Maduro is a key figure in the drug trade. I mean, pretty much everybody now knows. Hey, your problem is fentanyl. That's from Mexico with chemicals coming from China. None of that doesn't have anything to do with Maduro. Cocaine, don't like cocaine. That's coming from Colombia, not coming from Venezuela. So he hasn't made the case, and that's why it does seem just baffling why he's going down this path.
Well, I mean, George and I, quickly, because there are probably other questions here, but George and I speculated that the so-called Gaza ceasefire, well, there's never going to be a second phase. Everyone, I got to break it to you, it's not going to happen. Okay, Ukraine is a huge wild card, and my gut right now tells me the Russians are going to say, sorry, this is not for us. We made it clear in Anchorage what we're interested in. You want to do your little dance with your Europeans? We're not on board for it, and it will continue. Why do I say those first two things? Because Venezuela, well, yeah, they can force regime change there. I mean, there's no doubt about that. Okay, during a night, during a week, during 3 months, maybe longer, but if they put their mind to it, yes, they will do it. Okay. Right. But it will never. It can't. I don't see how in any universe how that can be translated to a win.
Right.
One American soldier dies during this, and they can say why.
Yeah, absolutely. That's Trump's biggest problem, because the moment
he's looking for a win, he thinks it's an easy win. It's not. It's never an easy one.
That's right. That's right. I mean, even if there are, you bomb Caracas, civilians are killed. Okay, Americans can live with that. They've done that before. But if an American is killed, whoa, hey, Mr. Trump, you promised that you were going to keep us out of wars, and now, an American has got killed for no obvious reason. So there's no upsides for him. Anyway, thank you, Stone River. And then Cynthia, always good to see you, Cynthia. Thank you so much, as always, for your generosity. And Cynthia says, Ukraine requires U.S. intelligence to conduct any kind of massive drone strike, yes, such as the one they did on the Russian oil tankers in Turkey's exclusive economic zone in the Black Sea, yes, as well as on the ones they probably did on the Caspian pipeline, co-owned by U.S. energy companies, no less. So is Budanov heading to Miami to get more orders from the CIA to conduct more strikes on Russian civilian infrastructure, including infrastructure co-owned by US, Turkey, or any other NATO country? That's a very interesting point, because we always say, oh, well, Trump isn't going to give them the tomahawk.
We should have her on as a co-host one day.
I agree.
Always excellent questions.
I always question it. Always make always have to really think about this. Yeah, that is a great idea. But I think that the drones, absolutely. They all of these attacks using drones, that's all basically U.S. intelligence, U.S. targeting. I mean, there's no other way of going with it. They have the satellite technology, the satellite guidance system, so there's no question. But then what I think is so important is that Trump kind of makes these threats. That's it. Thanksgiving, and that's it. But he never follows up on this. I mean, the way that you could issue your threat, which has any real credibility, is that, well, no more intelligence sharing. That's it. You're on your own. Now try, using these drones for your attacks. But he doesn't do that. And so as long as he can say, oh, yeah, we're going to continue sharing intelligence, okay, fine. Then you continue. Well, why should Ukrainian anyway be intimidated by Trump's threats?
I don't want to belabor the point, but inquiring minds are looking at Trump's statecraft, if we can call it that, And look what's going on in Gaza. It's not going anywhere. And the Russians are saying, well, it's Witkoff, the same, and Kushner. These are the same guys that did that. I mean, is this your best, talent? Because you're coming up short on that. And you claim it's a victory, and now you're coming up short here. See, you know, the the West is so insular; it doesn't see obvious things that everybody else in the world
Right.
sees.
Right.
Okay,
Right.
and so yeah, I mean, words are words, but most of the world likes to see actions. Actions tell you a lot about intentionality, and so by continuing this intelligence sharing, it shows the intention of the Trump administration. And why would you trust that and drawing up some kind of conclusions?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, ultimately, it has to be, and any kind of agreement has to be, involve the United States saying no more arms for Ukraine, no more intelligence sharing. I mean, that's it. There is a cutoff, and then we can get somewhere. Then we can get a deal. And Trump. I mean, going back to Gaza, Trump always knew and knows now that there's only one way that this Gaza deal can work out, and that's if you're going to apply serious pressure against Netanyahu. It's serious, absolutely serious. That's it.
And that is not even remote. Not
Nothing.
even
Nothing.
not even remotely possible at
Not
this point.
remotely. So when you have all these, like with Egypt and Qatar, and saying, they're very politely saying, well, Israel is not really adhering to the terms of the agreement. They're really saying, the United States isn't applying pressure in the way that we expected the United States to apply pressure against Israel. If you don't do that, then you're not going to get the agreement. You're absolutely right. There isn't going to be a phase two. Anyway, so anyway, you're absolutely right. Thank you, Cynthia. We'll have you as a co-host, as Peter
And
said.
Cynthia, you always ask amazing questions. My compliments.
Yes. See, thank you so much, Cynthia. Really appreciate it. Ergos, good morning. Good morning. Steve K9 says, when is Russia going to close the port of Odessa? And when is Russia going to lower the central bank rate, the interest rate, to something reasonable? Okay, good question. No sane country operates on an economy with the prime rate between 16 and 21%. Yeah. Do you think Russia is serious about negotiations with terms which would constitute a surrender, or is this just to mollify Trump for a while the necessary military victory is achieved? And then,
Well, I mean, there's a lot of things, and I'll address the last one real quick here. It's something that George and I pointed out in our always very extensive Sunday edition, is that if you really think about it, over the last 2.5 weeks, this whole discussion about these negotiations, this is an inter-Western, inter-NATO discussion. As far as we know, over the weekend, the Russians got a hard copy or something like that, and
Right.
they still haven't said anything yet.
No.
So all of this discussion that's been going on is a discussion among members of the West, and particularly NATO. And the Russians are just like, well, just going to watch and just see what they're going to hash out. Is it 28? Is it 19? You will make up your mind, okay? So, my sense is, and I usually don't say this, after living here for a long time and living and working with Russians every single day, they're not going to be shortchanged. It's not going to happen because, again, it's something that's not talked about enough. The Russians can say, no, we'll keep the war going. I mean, Europeans want to keep it going. And we can't figure out what the Trump people want. You keep giving them the Ukrainians intelligence and arms, and you want, what are you talking about? That's what they're at this point. And George and I have discussed it. Maybe the number 3, because of the Trinity and all of that in Western civilization, this is strike 3. We're seeing potentially strike 3. Now, all of this could change tomorrow and Wednesday, Thursday, because it's the Trump administration. But, the Russians are watching and they're just saying, give us something we can actually react to, because we made it clear to you in Anchorage, and our position hasn't changed.
No, I think that's right. And I think that, I think Russia would be prepared to make some serious concessions. Obviously, they are talking about making serious concessions, but then they would have to have serious concessions from the Western side. And and that goes back to the question we were answering a moment ago from Cynthia, which is no more intelligence sharing, no more weapons. Because if we're going to make another one of these deals, and you're going to continue to arm Ukraine, and you're going to continue to provide it with missiles and everything, then essentially you're just preparing the ground for the same thing in 5-10 years time. And the Europeans are absolutely open about this. I mean, they're
Yeah.
absolutely open. I mean, it's not like they're hiding their objectives. Yeah, we want an unconditional immediate ceasefire, and then we're just going to keep arming and arming Ukraine. We need a breather for a few years, and then we start it up again. That's why I don't think Russia's going to make any concessions until you knock this thing off. You say basically you have to cut Ukraine off, and I think without that, I just don't see any real incentive.
Yeah,
For
and the side that wants a ceasefire, that means they're losing. Russia doesn't want a ceasefire because it's not losing.
So yeah, so that's why I think it's unlikely. But yeah, I do think they are trying to keep Trump happy, and they're trying to fuel some divisions between the United States and Europe. I don't think that's going to get very far because ultimately they're joined at the hip. It's going, it's very difficult to separate them. However annoying they find one another. I mean, Trump has shown that he's still ultimately, hey, I preside over NATO, and he doesn't want to lose that role as presiding over NATO. But the Russians do want to play on this American-European issues, but without making some real move that no more of this intelligence. I don't see any reason at all for for Russia to make this, particularly now. This isn't back in 2014 when Russians were somewhat naively believed that Angela Merkel was someone they could do business with. Or we don't even have to go back to 1990 when Gorbachev believed James Baker was someone that you could do business with. But now, after all this, I mean, to throw all this away on some stupid deal, I just don't see it.
Well, it wouldn't be accepted by the population.
No, I don't think so. Interest rates. Well, I guess I mean that's obviously a very good point about this horrendous interest rates. On the other hand, inflation is a serious problem.
Exactly.
And so, exactly. No one wants high interest rates, but if you've got horrific inflation rate, then that's pretty much.
I inquired at my bank about it. I inquired at my bank about a personal loan. They told me it was 27%.
Yeah.
I said that's the highest in the world. Nobody has that. Okay, it's because of inflation and the economy because of the conflict is overheated. And I'll tell you, people grumble about it all the time.
Well, it's brutal. I mean, it's just people.
Well, I mean, particularly if you're a lower income person, then you're like chasing your tail. You can't keep up. Keep up.
We got we don't have much time, but I see Vic Shakopopoulos has asked a very interesting question, which we don't have time now to go into, but maybe we'll have. I'll talk about it on our solo, but. On one of your last live streams, you stated that the Nazi-Soviet pact was Stalin's tactical move because he expected all the Eastern European states to join the inevitable German invasion. While I agree with that theory in principle, I don't agree with putting Poland in the same group. Poland was indeed ready to fight a war with USSR, but never on the side of Germany. In fact, that was one of the reasons for the German invasion of Poland. Poland has no problem with the idea of fighting a war with Germany, but he wouldn't fight it on the side of the USSR. These are the peculiarities of Polish geopolitical thought. I would just simply say that Poland in the 1930s was very much a willing partner to Hitler. The problem the Poles didn't fully appreciate that they had to make a concession first. I mean, I think they were caught by surprise when before everything else, suddenly Hitler said, "Well, we're going to address this Danzig problem. I mean, this partnership isn't going to work out if if I'm going to let Danzig go. I mean, it's a matter of German credibility that I mean, Danzig is more important than the Sudetenland." and Poland was a little surprised by this. I thought, that so throughout the 1930s, the British did not like Poland. They found Poles really annoying because they essentially saw Poland as Germany's junior partner.
Junior part, and they
Yeah.
had a non-aggression pact as well.
Right, it was one of Hitler's earliest
First,
policies, which was to sign a non-aggression pact with Poland. So it was just that the Poles, not for the first time, kind of were very short-sighted and didn't see the writing on the wall, particularly after Sudetenland. And Hitler, I think, was a little surprised that Poland should be so obdurate about this. He said, "Hey, we can have a lucrative partnership, and all you have to do is, make concessions on Danzig," and the Poles didn't do it. I absolutely do think that Poland would have been more than willing, as to be Germany's junior partner against the Soviet Union, whom they absolutely hated and loathed.
which I mean, considering the nature of the Polish regime at the time, that was a natural inclination to be aligned with Germany against the Soviet Union.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I think with a number of regimes in Eastern Europe, they absolutely hated the Soviet Union. I mean, and that's understandable. I mean, there was a real fear of communism. I mean,
Okay, I really like this. Everything fell apart after Pilsudski died in 1935. Well, that's a separate podcast. Okay,
separate thought.
And I'm glad someone knows that. Okay,
Right. So, that's it.
I'm
Anyway,
not agreeing or disagreeing with the statement. I just think it's an interesting characterization.
let's go. It's an interesting, yeah, absolutely very interesting point. Anyway, our time is up. So thank you very much, everybody. You asking really interesting questions. Pity that they came really towards the end, but thank you, everyone who joined us. Thank you those who asked questions, and above all, thank you to everyone who put something into that tip jar. The dogs already, I can see that they're getting quite angry. This isn't satisfactory. Nothing is ever satisfactory. But thank you. We will be back same time next Monday, and then of course you can join me tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern time for my solo. I hope to see you then. Until then, all the best.